Hey friends, it's Gloria and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be doing my June reading wrap up. All of the books that I read in the month of June, and I have a lot to talk about. I read a ton. I don't know how I read so many, but I was motivated and driven and just went through them. I have a big ol' fat stack of historical fiction, probably the most proper historical fiction that I've read in 1 month. 6 of those to talk about. I was a co-host for the Read Historical Fiction 2025 readathon, and so I was very motivated to read some of that historical fiction. I'll talk about that. I have quite a bit of fantasy that I read and a couple newer releases as well. A couple nonfiction, a graphic novel. I kind of have a whole bunch of things to talk about. So without further ado, let's get into the books. Start with historical fiction because that's my favorite genre. That's probably what most of you want to hear about anyways. I was able to read 3 out of the 5 prompts that you guys voted for. Thank you all again for voting for the books that I should read. I read 3 of them. I wasn't able to complete 2, but that's okay. I read other historical fiction. A book that fulfilled based on real people is In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. I didn't fully connect with this one. I liked learning about Dominican Republic history, about the dictator Trujillo that lived there and his time period and how that affected the people. Specifically, this book follows the 4 sisters of this one family who became revolutionaries who decided to start a rebellion and go against the regime, and they died, and we know that early on that only one of the 4 sisters survived, and we get all of their different perspectives from all across their life, starting with very young, like almost coming of age, into them as adults and the choices they made. And again, I liked learning about the history, but I didn't fully love the way the story was told. I had a hard time connecting or really being super invested in the characters, the sisters. Maybe it's because I know that they die. I don't know if that was part of it. I mean, I think it landed like on 2.5 stars. Again, I liked the history. I liked learning something new, but for some reason, this one, a bit of a disconnect. So appreciate you guys voting. I'm glad it's finally off my shelves, but it wasn't a new favorite standout historical fiction read, and I don't know, I guess I'd recommend it for those that really want to read about Dominican Republican history. Maybe if you're going there on vacation and you want to read a book that's set there and about the history that's not a nonfiction, you could probably pick this one up and get something out of it. But in terms of like loving characters and being like swept up and invested, that just didn't happen to me. Next up, I picked up The Chilbury Ladies Choir by Jennifer Bryan. This fulfilled the arts prompt because it had to do with choir and music and singing, and the audiobook was wonderful for this one because there is some choral like singing in it, and it was lovely. I had a really good time with this one. I actually felt redeemed in my Jennifer Bryan reading because I read The Kitchen Front by her. I didn't really enjoy that one, and this one I had a wonderful time with. It's such a fun little read. It definitely scratches that itch for reading a book that's set in like a small town little English village and the effects of the different characters in that town based on the events of World War II. The only thing about this book is it took a little bit of a time to set everyone straight because we follow 7 different perspectives and there's a lot to keep track of. But then once I know who the characters are and who I'm reading in that moment, I started to enjoy the book a little bit more, and there's really a mystery at play at heart too that really kept me going through the whole story. It actually deals with some pretty heavy topics. There's definitely certain characters that are going through grief and experiencing really hardship. Certain characters die. You're dealing with pregnancy and loss and death and love triangles and drama and scandal, all set in a small town, and it was overall a fun time. Even with all of the heavy topics, this felt like a lighter historical fiction read to me because of some of the humor in it and just silliness. I feel like this is a good comp for, I don't know, the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society or whatever, because there is an epistolary element to this book. There's a lot of characters here because we are reading from journal entries or letters, and so that gave kind of that feeling, again, small town as well. This is a solid World War II book. I really enjoyed my time. The next book I read that fulfilled the about a specific event prompt is The Mountains Sing by Nguyen Phan Quy Mai, and this is about the Vietnam War from the Vietnamese perspective. And this is really where I enjoyed this one, but then didn't enjoy this one. I read In the Time of Butterflies right after The Mountains Sing, and I felt like these two are comparable for you are reading about kind of real people set in a different country that's going through a war or something just really hard in that country. And this one was just done much better to me than this one. And even then, this wasn't a perfect book for me. My main critique is that this entire book was telling, not showing. And a commenter and booktuber for the love of the story actually warned me about that, is that this book is good, but it is all telling. There's not much dialogue. There's not much actually you're in the moment with the character experiencing the thing. This whole thing is a story told. We have 2 timelines. We have a grandmother telling her granddaughter her story, and then we have the granddaughter writing the story. But I thought that it worked for me with a region that I'm not familiar with a country I'm not familiar with, so I liked it for that. But I think if that was for maybe an event I'm more familiar with, I would be quite bored with that storytelling and I would be wanting something more from the book. I have a couple other historical fiction books that didn't fully work for me. Bridge of Scarlet Leaves by Christina McMorris. This is the first book of hers that I've read, and I do want to read more from her, but I didn't love this one. We have a forbidden love between a white girl and a Japanese man in LA, and they fall in love and get married, and then they're torn apart by the war. And really the biggest theme is the discrimination that the Japanese experienced during this war. We get a lot of that from the Japanese perspective and just how this woman was treated for marrying someone who was Japanese, and also the fallout from her family of not accepting her marriage. And I think for me, the disconnect was the characters as well. I rated this book very high on my World War II historical fiction try first chapter thing because I loved the little like romance towards the beginning, but then the characters got really annoying and I didn't like the choices they were making. I didn't like the emotions behind what they were feeling. I don't know, I just felt disconnected from the story. I think I landed on like 2.5 stars. I might even say that I wouldn't want to read more from this author, but I do want to read her newest release. I talked about it in my mid-year freakout tag. I want to read the newest book by her because it's set in Oregon and it has to do with the Shanghai tunnels and the history there at Portland. Sounds really interesting, but this one, I don't know, it didn't do it for me. I haven't read much from the Japanese internment side of things, so I think there's a better book about that experience out there than this one. Another one that wasn't a favorite, but I loved my time buddy reading it with Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, and that's The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton, my first one by her. And a lot of you said to start with The Secret Keeper, which I still have on my shelves, and I decided to keep that and The Lake House. But after reading this, I decided to get rid of Distant Hours and Clockmaker's Daughter because I don't think that she's the author for me. I might still try those two books based on some of the positives from the story, but overall, not a favorite read. And the thing that I got from this was tedious. This was a tedious read. I know a lot of you said it's slow going, but goodness, this was slow going. This was get to the point. This felt like a mystery first and historical second. We follow a bunch of timelines and we follow a bunch of characters, and it was confusing to keep track of everybody, and we get this mystery unfolding of this family secrets. You know me when it comes to family secrets. I've talked about this many times. The pet peeve of mine sometimes of a grandma dying and being like, I have this big secret, and then the granddaughter being like, I need to uncover the past. So that was this whole book. There's a grandmother who has a big secret about her family of origin, and the granddaughter goes on a grand adventure to figure it out, and we get timeline after timeline after timeline, like Inception. It was Inception of memories and timelines, and it was a bit confusing to keep track of everything and just tedious. Like I said, a tedious read. I will say Kate Morton writes sense of place really well. Like I got a feeling of the environment and what the character was feeling and all that kind of thing, but I didn't particularly care for these characters all that much. Yeah, more of a mystery than even historical. Like there wasn't really anything historical about it except that it went back in time, but we didn't get any actual historical events and things. So that was that. Unfortunate experience with Kate Morton, but maybe I'll try her again. Like The Secret Keeper, you guys said that one's her #1 best one, maybe. But The Lake House, it got turned into a movie, but I think she might not be for me. Let's end with a positive historical fiction, The Jackal's Mistress by Chris Bajalian. I had a good time with this one. This is a Civil War story, which I haven't read too much from there, and I thought it was really good. It had a romance subplot, which I was all about because I'm in a romance mood, like I mentioned in my mid-year freakout. And my recent wrap-ups, I've just been more into the romance theme of things, and this one fit the bill. But it also is a little bit morally gray at the same time, which isn't what I usually read. This is definitely an exception to the rule for me. We get a woman who's on the Confederate side of things. Her husband went away to war. She hasn't seen him or heard from him. He's presumed dead. And then a severely wounded Yankee soldier ends up on her property, and she ends up bringing him back to health along with the people that live on her plantation and farm. They kind of get together to try to get him back home to the Yankees and get through the Confederate soldiers that are surrounding the area. She turns into this kind of badass woman, and this is based on a true story, a true couple. They weren't a couple, but a true pairing, and their diary entries and actual historical evidence of what they went through. And I thought that was really interesting. I like the author's note. I liked the way he told a story. It was, you know, full of plot and interesting dialogue and to the point, not too long. I definitely had a good time, and he's a very prolific author. I feel like he has tons and tons of books, so I'm definitely keeping an eye out for more of what I should read from him. If you read something from him that you've enjoyed, please let me know. Yeah, a good Civil War book I would recommend. It is pretty gruesome though. It gets like intense. And I feel like this kind of had similar themes to the book March by Geraldine Brooks, which was the Little Women retelling told from the father figure of Little Women and his time in the Civil War. And this kind of gave off very similar energy. So if you liked March by Geraldine Brooks, I would say this is a good comparison, even though this has nothing to do with Little Women, but that Civil War feeling and maybe some of the morally gray things that you just are dealing with as a person that is maybe going through a wartime period. Goodness, I've been talking for a while and we still got lots to go. Let's get into fantasy. I tried the YA popular fantasy and Ember in the Ashes, and I read through all 3 books. There's actually 4, but I decided to DNF it after reading 3. I really should have stopped after reading the 2nd book. I'm trying fantasy, dipping my toe in some of the popular titles just to see how I fare with it, and I thought this one was fine. It was very readable, very entertaining. I've heard comparisons that this is like Hunger Games meets Gladiator meets Divergent, and it definitely gave some of those feelings. And there is strong YA, like romantic, like lusting for one another throughout the book. It was entertainment, but I didn't love it. And then as we continued the series, I more and more started to hate it and was like, this sucks. This isn't at all anything that I'm interested in, because it just got into the parts of fantasy that I don't love, which is the unrealistic like world of things. There's lots of djinn and the night watchman, night crawler person, spirits and ghosts, and a lot of just creatures out there that these people are fighting. I didn't care. I didn't care at all about this supernatural like force of things in this whole story. Would I recommend the series? No, I don't think it's at all any good compared to Hunger Games for me personally. And again, I did not like the supernatural side of things at all. Wasn't my vibe, and I know that about myself. So I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad I can confidently say that's not my thing. For example, I really enjoyed the Hunger Games and I enjoyed the Divergent series. Those are set in the real world and there's really nothing magical about that whatsoever. And this is all just like, you know, made up spirits that I didn't like reading about. Another popular fantasy that I read and tried and thought was fine is The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. This was pretty ridiculous. It just was over the top silly, very similar kind of to the one other, I'll put it up here, I can't remember the full title, but it was like a Jane Austen mystery. It just felt so ridiculous to me that I couldn't enjoy it, and this also felt so ridiculous to me that I couldn't enjoy it. It's definitely like romance first, then historical, then fantasy. This is a strong like slow burn, you know, like lusting for each other from the first page thing, and it was fine. It was fine. It was a silly read, but it was too silly for me. Next for fantasy, I read another Hermione Harry Potter fanfiction, and that is The Portrait of Draco Malfoy. Definitely one of the favorite covers out of the bunch of that I've read. And this one was also just okay for me. I thought that they had some really interesting themes, and I liked some of the kind of magical communicative parts of this book. I liked their romance. That was all a positive. The big negative for me was Hermione's career and how she joined the Ministry of Magic to be like the head of military aura stuff. It just didn't at all connect with who we know Hermione to be from the books. So there's definitely a disconnect for me there. I liked her and Draco and I liked the romance, but I didn't like other parts of the book. So that's what brought it down. But it was one towards the positives versus the negatives when it comes to all the Hermione fan fictions out there. But I read another one, another popular new release lit fic book that I don't read too much of literary fiction, but this one is so literary. Tilt by Emma Petty. I picked this up because I was immediately hooked by the premise, and it's set in Portland, Oregon. And I was like, I need to read it. And this is where the book premise works so much better to me and is more interesting than the actual book itself. This is set in Portland, Oregon when the big earthquake happened. So if you don't know where we're situated, we're like right up the fault lines, and there's supposedly like we're waiting for a big huge earthquake with the, I can't remember from my geology classes in college, but basically the fault lines are like really close to each other or something's going on, and there should be a big earthquake that will ultimately kind of disrupt this whole city and mess up the coastline and all that kind of thing. Who knows if that will happen. But anyways, this book is set if that happens. Like, what if that happened? But the main character is a 9-month pregnant woman shopping for a crib in IKEA, and then the earthquake happens, and then she has to walk because the roads are not able, like you can't ride the car anywhere because stuff's destroyed. She has to walk all the way home. She's on a mission to try to find her husband. She just kind of writes this story. It's very stream of consciousness to her daughter, her unborn daughter, kind of telling her the story of her life so far up to the events of this earthquake. I will just say this, what I feel with literary fiction, it's so unsatisfactory to me. It's just, as a reader, I'm always disappointed and let down because there's so much unsaid. And maybe I'm too dumb and I need more things told to me. I need more resolution. I need more to the story. But this is just so rambly and random that I just feel let down when I read it. We just get a lot of stream of consciousness, like I said, about stuff that doesn't seem important to the story. I don't get it. So this was a 2. Again, love the idea. Love to read a book set like a real survival story set during an earthquake disaster in my city. Would be so cool. And this wasn't it. It wasn't it. Lastly, I'll end with nonfiction. I picked up Cy Montgomery's newest little, almost like novella, What the Chicken Knows, a new appreciation for the world's most familiar bird. And we own, I should say my parents, but I live on the family farm. We own like 45 chickens, and we eat eggs from them and love on them. And it was really cool to hear Cy Montgomery's side of things. It's definitely less about the actual chicken and more about her experience with chickens on her land that she lives somewhere on the East Coast. I read Soul of an Octopus from her and a few other books that she's written, and I really just enjoy her writing, though she's so peaceful to hear from. I listened to this as an audiobook and she narrates herself, and it's just kind of also a bit rambly but also fun anecdotes about her and nature and connecting to nature and connecting to animals, and it was sweet. It was sweet to read about. If you have any affinity for chickens or want to keep them, I would say read this. It makes you appreciate them more, for sure. Another one I picked up about bugs is Insectopolis, A Natural History by Peter Cooper. This is an adult graphic novel, fully nonfiction, recommended from Shelley Swearingen, actually. She said it was a beautiful book, and the artwork is beautiful. It was fun to read, and it is like a history book about insects, where they came from, and definitely on the evolution side of things, talking about millions of years ago, the insects here, how they developed, and we get just stories from the different types of insects. A little section about bees and a section about butterflies, a section about beetles and about dragonflies and etc. And you go through it, and it's told like from the perspective of the bugs going through an exhibit in the Metropolitan Museum. It's set in New York, and it's like all humans died and the insects are going through the museum kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way, learning about their own history. And it was a bit silly in that way. I think I liked it fine. I liked the artwork and I liked the idea, and I learned, you know, some other random facts about bugs, and it was fun to peruse through, but it didn't impact me or wasn't like, oh my gosh, I love this, I would love to own this, and you know, that kind of thing. If you're super into bugs, maybe you would really like this. All right, and lastly, I read Oh Crap, Potty Training, Everything Modern Parents Need to Know to Do It Once and Do It Right by Jamie Glowacki. It's a great potty training book. Well, I hope so. I haven't started yet. I read it and I hope to do it in about a month. Set aside time. This is what I've learned. I mean, when you become a new parent, you learn that everything is polarizing. I thought it was like, yeah, this is a great potty training book. Then you go on Goodreads and you see people, and my other friends who've read this and mention it in mom groups. Some people like hate this book and think she sucks, and there's just very polarizing views on every subject possible when it comes to parenting and raising children, and potty training is no exception. There's people who have lots of opinions about it. I liked her opinions. I liked her method. I like the way that she thinks that it should go, and she's clearly has research and experience doing it. So I'm gonna try her way. I guess I shouldn't say I fully agree because I haven't done it yet, but I thought this was a great potty training book, so I'll let you know how it goes at the end of August. So those are my rambly thoughts on the books that I read this last month. Really interestingly, I didn't even intend for that to happen, but I have 3 books with birds on the cover. That's kind of a fun little Didn't intend to read books with birds. I tried more fantasy and it wasn't particularly successful, but I did really check off that box of knowing that I do not like any supernatural things in my fantasy, which is why I avoid the genre. But I want to read more fantasy because I like some parts of it. I like some things about magic, but I don't like demons and spirits and things. So that's not something I ever want to read. Reading this graphic novel really did make me miss graphic novels. I used to read a lot more when I first started BookTube, and I love nonfiction graphic novels specifically. So even though this wasn't a complete win and like new favorite book, it made me miss it, and so I want to pick up more. So if you have any graphic novel recommendations for me. And then the other takeaway is that I have a couple authors that I want to read more from. Like I would definitely read more Chris Jolyon, and even though I didn't love Bridge of Scarlet Leaves, I do plan to read more Christina Morris, and I felt redeemed with Jennifer Ryan, so I will be keeping an eye out for more of what she comes out with. And Kate Morton, I'm on the fence. I'm still on the fence. I might try her, but I might not. Please let me know what you think of my thoughts and my reading and how your reading was in June. Any favorite standout reads? Thank you so much for spending some time today with me, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye!